Some of you may remember that Ultraviolette is a Bengaluru-based startup with some funding from TVS amongst others. And in 2019, they presented us with a prototype that claimed to be India's first electric superbike. With an 8+ second 0 to 100 sprint and a top speed under 150 kilometers an hour, it was anything but a superbike. But compared to the other electric motorcycles of the time, be they merely assembled or thoroughly engineered, the Ultraviolette stood out with its KTM-derived chassis and handling package, a unique yet natural soundtrack, and an exciting powertrain which was comparable to some of the kicker 250s when it came to excitement levels. But Ultraviolette couldn't do good on their promise of delivering the F77 by 2020, and the pandemic was only half the problem, with engineering and production constraints being the bigger challenge. But they seem to have found solutions in not watering down the product but actually enhancing it. And while they were at it, they have also ensured that the specs still remain relevant 3 years on. So what exactly have they been up to? Well, we ate the proverbial pudding to find out. This is the production model, and yes, it has a pretty tall asking price, but the fit and finish looks premium, and so are the specifications.
For starters, it's lost its party piece, its conversation starter, the removable battery pack, and that cool door for the battery compartment which would nicely open out. That is gone. But in place of those theatrics, what you get is a really massive battery pack, one of the largest of its kind on an Indian two-wheeler.
What has also changed is that jet-inspired sonic sound from the powertrain, which is present but quieter because of a more refined transmission. It still sounds quite unique though, which is good news. The powertrain itself comprises of a more powerful motor now, which gets its juice from a massive 10.3 kWh battery pack. In my previous F77 review, I had said that they should aim for at least a 200 km range. And with this new battery, that claim is over 300 km now.
And I'm glad they listened. Forget the IDC, forget the Indian driving cycle or the claimed range that they're putting out on their brochures. I think a 250 km range should be doable depending on how you play around with the different riding modes, which is really good, which means that you can enjoy Sunday morning rides like these. You can come to your favorite destination, and then by the time you grab your coffee or your breakfast, you're able to charge the vehicle again. Now you will have to carry your charger around all the time, but the good part is the booster charger, which is the faster AC charger that you can buy, it works with a regular 3-pin plug as well, and that will give you about 75 kilometers of range and about an hour of charging is what Ultraviolette says. So with that kind of a charging time, let's put it that way, it's very easy. Also, the charging socket, it is similar to Ola's. So if you are able to find the Ola hypercharger network, and if you are somehow able to get that gun to work with this, well, the hardware is compatible. Software, I don't know if you need apps and whatever, if the Ola charger will allow you to charge this, that I don't know yet. But yeah, this is the new universal standard. On the same topic, I really hoped that they would have had some kind of a locking mechanism for this flap. As of now, there is none. Even when the bike is rolling, this can still open. So this is something that needs to be addressed. Now, as for the booster charger or even the regular charger, if you are to carry it around, if you remember in my previous review, I said that you would have to lug it around on your backpack. But no, now you also get the option of 2 panniers. But again, electric vehicle designers are constantly fighting for each and every bit of aerodynamic efficiency that they can get out of the vehicle, right? So with 2 big panniers, of course, it is going to reduce that aerodynamic efficiency. It is going to take a toll on the overall range, especially when you're riding out on the highway. So my suggestion to Ultraviolette would be to design some kind of a tail bag, something that has a more aerodynamic shape so that the streamlined flow is sort of maintained, and that can then house that particular charger. The charger can also be mounted on the seat. They have an accessory for that, but if they can make use of those same the G hooks and everything, and if they can make a nice big tail bag that is also aerodynamic in profile, I think that would be a better addition. With that kind of a massive battery pack, the dimensions for which, however, remain unchanged whether you go for the smaller battery or the bigger battery, there is, of course, a lot of weight. Choose a smaller battery and the overall weight of the motorcycle is 197 kilos. choose the larger battery, which is about 10 kilos heavier, that is the only differentiator for the weight. This is 207 kilos then. Now, with 207 kilos, moving it around in a tight parking spot, that becomes a bit of a problem. Now, you can always start the bike and move it forward, but to move it back, there is a bit of resistance that you get from the powertrain.
There is a reverse and a forward mode which will work like an assist in situations like these. But using these can get a little cumbersome and time consuming when you want to make a quick 3-point U-turn on tight roads like these. These reverse or forward riding modes also restrict the speed to 5 kilometers an hour, meaning you have to again stop, disengage the mode and then continue riding. Ultraviolette agree with us that this could get cumbersome and they can actually address this issue by making the forward-forward or the forward-to-right transition a smoother process. Let's hope that happens. Once on the move, the F77 doesn't feel as heavy, be it the racetrack or the tight mountain roads.
I know a lot of you will sort of ridicule me for saying this, but again, think of it like something like the GS. Feels very heavy, the big GS, but because of the Boxer Twin, all the mass is down low. Is the same kind of philosophy that you get here with this motorcycle. That heavy battery pack is still keeping all the mass centralized and down low. The CG is actually quite low. It's also in line with your riding triangle. So overall, the weight management is really good.
The weight management is that good considering the entire powertrain weighs about 95 kilos. The F77 is very manageable around the hairpins too, and the linear power delivery also helps. Transitioning from side to side for switchbacks is quite easy too. The more rounded profile of the new MRF tires also contributes to that effect.
Two components make a debut on this motorcycle. One are these MRF steel brace tires. I have never heard of them before, but I was super impressed on the track. Remember how I was going gaga about how the Ultraviolette was handling so beautifully on the MMRT in 2019, and I also said that the chassis is what is making it happen, not so much the tires, but those were M7s. Now again, I don't want to take anything away from the chassis. The new chassis is also equally good, but those tires are very sticky. The other component that makes a debut on this motorcycle are these 41mm upside down forks from Gabriel. Of course, these might go to other motorcycles as well, other motorcycles in a similar space. We don't know just yet. But out of the box, the suspension setup is also quite good. Now these forks aren't adjustable for compression or damping, but you get 6 clicks of preload adjustment. Similarly, you get 3mm of preload adjustment for the rear suspension. Out of the box, I was quite impressed with the setup. I didn't really have to tinker around with anything. The grip from the tires, the way the suspension behaved on the track and here on the mountain road, I'm super impressed.
The suspension is set up on the firmer side though, and how it behaves on poorer road conditions or with a pillion and luggage remains to be seen with a road test.
At 1340mm, the wheelbase is exactly similar to the KTM RC. Even the rake angle is similar to the KTM RC. So essentially why they have done that is, again, proven calculations, proven dimensions, so they have gone with that. However, the rest of the chassis is now bespoke. The trellis frame holds the battery and the battery management system, the motor, etc. And that powertrain is the stress member. But because of how they've designed the entire powertrain or divided the various components around that chassis, what you get is a much better ground clearance. Okay, let's not say much better, marginally better ground clearance than the RC. 4mm taller ground clearance than the RC. So at 160mm, this is decent ground clearance, decent enough to make Ultraviolette go out and test this motorcycle on some of the off-road trails, beach, rocky terrain, etc. In fact, they even showed us a motorcycle with Pirelli Rally STR tires on it, and that motorcycle has been going around on all the dirt trails. And of course, this is not the kind of motorcycle that you would want to take there, but they are sort of exploring what more can they do with this platform. So maybe an ADV with an electric powertrain, who knows, that could be next. So the acceleration times are actually comparable to something like any of the KTM 250s. The braking, however, is actually better than the KTM 390s even. They're claiming a 38-meter 100 to 0, right? So that was of course done on the track. On the road it might be different, but as of now it looks like the braking claims are actually better than the KTMs. Like I said, acceleration comparable to any of the 250s, but with that you will need the ballistic mode to get those kind of timings. Now the ballistic mode, up until now, when the launch happened, they told you that it is only available for maybe when the battery has at least 70% state of charge. So between 70 to 100% state of charge is when you could use the ballistic mode. But now the ballistic mode can be used till up to 30% of the state of charge. So 70% of the battery can be used for on the seat entertainment, on the boil performance, etc. So out on the track, let's not put a range there, but maybe about an hour long riding around a racetrack is easily doable with a fully charged battery in the ballistic mode.
There are 3 riding modes in all. A really dull glide mode which gives you about 1/3 the power, a combat mode where you can sort of optimize the range and the performance by using 2/3 the power, or the ballistic mode where you can go all guns blazing. The riding modes only affect the power, its delivery and the battery management, and can be changed on the fly using the thumb starter. The regenerative braking gets its own 3 modes though, which need to be accessed from the fairly intuitive instrumentation.
The braking hardware again is very similar to the KTM RC, but the tuning obviously is different. You see on the RC you get an engine, so you also get engine braking. Here things work a little differently because of an electric powertrain. So you have 3 region modes, low, medium and high. And then you have these physical brakes. Now out on the Meko Kartopia, very tight track, so I was having to trail brake into the corners quite often. I was also having to use the rear brake quite often to stabilize the motorcycle. The front wasn't feeling too adequate. I want a little bit more bite on the front. The rear still feels a bit more powerful. Then I found a hack, the regen modes. That sort of worked like an assist for me, because in low mode, it's as good as coasting. So there you are having to trail brake more often, having to use that rear brake more often. But then the medium mode sort of gave me a little bit of assistance in that deceleration from the motor itself. And then the high mode, that is where it felt a little bit more natural, almost like an ICE vehicle, where I could completely rely on the regen and the front brakes, not even have to tap the rear brake at all. And that's the mode I enjoyed the most. That is where I started picking up a lot more pace, because I was able to enter corners a lot more confidently. Now this kind of a motorcycle is ideally going to be bought by more advanced riders, so they will sort of figure out what works for them, what kind of regen mode works for them. But then Ultraviolette is also working on adding more regen modes. Right now you have 3, low, medium and high, but they're looking at expanding that to 10. I think they should also do an auto mode for people who probably don't understand regen too well or don't really want to invest too much time trying to figure out the different modes.
The trail braking initially made me wary of a possible low side, but by the end of the track session, the F77 allowed me to put a lot more trust in its chassis and the tires. Thankfully, they also have some onboard protection parts this time around.
I'm glad this is another feedback that they took very seriously. So inside this little fin that you see is a metal bracket. The metal bracket not only protects the battery, but it also acts like a frame slider in case you have a low side. On a similar note, they've also given you space to put swing arm and fork spools. So if you are taking it to the track, you will be able to have at least the basic protection in place. And if you want to take it to the track often, if you do not like the stock positioning of the foot peg, you can change this panel and get adjustable rear sets as well. To get an idea of what it looks like, take a look at the F99 that they showed at the Auto Expo.
The battery casing has a robust construction, claims Ultraviolette, and is designed to withstand shocks that the Indian road conditions will throw at it.
Of course, the Ather scooters never really faced any heat from the battery fires, but there have been other incidents, and that is bound to raise a lot of eyebrows, a lot of questions. In fact, even our friends here have been asking us about the thermal management. Now, Ultraviolette tells us that the thermal management system on this particular battery pack or the entire powertrain is actually state of the art. They have actually been using some aero grade electronics and components to ensure that the thermal management and even various factors to prevent any kind of a thermal runaway have been implemented in this particular battery pack or the management system. Also, they are ensuring that the batteries that are right at the center, or the cells that are right at the center, aren't running at an extremely higher temperature than the cells that are on the outside or closer to the casing, because that is where the cooling is happening from. So they have sort of managed the entire system in a way that the entire pack, no matter where the cell is placed inside the pack, all the cells are running at an optimum temperature, and there are almost 5-6 layers of security over and above the basic cooling to ensure that there is no thermal runaway, there is no fire, and in case something goes wrong, there are multiple ways in which the vehicle can just cut itself and stop a mishap from happening. At 800mm seat height, it should fit riders of most shapes and sizes in India. Of course, with the streamlined profile of the seating, with the streamlined profile of the bodywork, getting a good rider triangle, a comfortable rider triangle shouldn't be a problem at all. So sport touring, riding on the track, riding in the city, none of this should be a problem at all. Now, as far as the battery goes, it is an IP67 rated battery pack, and it's a completely sealed unit, which means water wading shouldn't be a matter of worry at all. Even the electronics are designed in such a way that they can withstand all of these natural challenges, let's put it that way. Now, in terms of the insurance or in terms of the financing, this is where things are going to be a little different. Like, for example, if it is a software derived problem that may lead to an accident with an EV, well, the insurance company will want a complete investigation on why the EV crashed, and then they may choose to either give you the compensation or get the compensation from the company for you, from the bike maker. Now, in terms of the finance, here's a very interesting bit that I heard today, that the finance is like any other motorcycle finance, right? However, if you turn out to be a defaulter, the financial organizations are speaking to startups like Ultraviolette, like Ather even, to completely kill the product if the EMI bounces or if you turn out to be a defaulter. So essentially what that means is you don't pay the EMI and the vehicle is killed, you will not be able to ride your vehicle. They will remotely kill it. Welcome to the future.
How that discussion about policies turns out remains to be seen. But hopefully, the EMI is the only recurring expense that you might have to worry about with the F77. Ultraviolette claims that the yearly maintenance for the F77 could be as low as Rs 5,000. So when you actually do the math, compared to other premium motorcycles with a petrol powertrain in this particular price bracket, you could actually end up saving a lot more by investing in its tall asking price. Let me know, what do you think?
It clearly shows that the 3-year delay has been more than just the pandemic, and in a good way. You see, like TVS, the company that has invested quite a bit of trust and money in this company, Ultraviolette too takes its engineering seriously. They have been making sure that they are perfecting the product and the promises that they want to deliver on. Of course, there are still concerns about the delivery timelines. I hope the deliveries start by the time this review goes up. I also still have concerns about the longevity and the reliability, because till I spend a lot of time with this vehicle, till I actually live with this vehicle, I can't really comment on these two aspects. But the bottom line is, if, like TVS, you two have decided to invest your time and your trust in this experiment, well, the production spec F77 is actually a far better product than the prototype that wowed us in 2019.